Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Deep Dive in a brand new venue. I can
You
still
can smell
the
it.
newness, right?
Yes.
Big shout out to you guys. Thanks so much for jumping into our recycling episode, giving us comments, and also taking part in our survey. As usual, Crispy and I are back here for another topic today.
Yep.
What's on the agenda?
We're talking about taxis. Okay, so I have a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Steve, I know you drive,
Yep.
but tell me, when was the last time you took a taxi?
I took a Grab actually, not a taxi, just the other day when I had to go and pick up a car from the workshop.
No,
Yeah.
as in a proper
Oh, a
taxi,
taxi.
the
Oh,
one with
Grab
the
is the car
light
there.
on top.
With the
like
light that
it's-
says
yep.
on call.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or busy.
I think when I went to the airport, because I booked a Grab, but a taxi came.
Ah,
Which is part of our
which
discussion.
is exactly our discussion today.
This topic has come to light again because of the recent announcement that surcharges will become permanent. So, Walter, I start with you. You're a transport economist, and you've seen the numbers change over the years. The taxi population in Singapore has shrunk. 2014, it was 28,736. As of May this year, it's 13,330. Now, that's a huge number that has dropped in terms of number of taxis on our roads. You know that song, Video Killed the Radio Star? Yeah, so in this case, I don't know.
So he's old enough to know
The-
that song.
Yeah. In this case, the app killed the actual taxi.
Yeah, well, I think to be more precise, ride-hailing killed the old taxi model, right? But it didn't kill the taxi per se. The fleet of taxis has been shrinking over time. There have been more and more ride-hailing vehicles registered, but for the taxis themselves, right, it's not the case that, for example, all those taxi drivers have been eliminated. A lot of the taxi drivers have simply gone over to becoming private hire drivers. And even for the remaining taxi drivers, actually most of them today make most of their revenue using a ride-hailing booking platform or using even their own taxi company's platform, which is using a ride-hailing method to arrange fares rather than a metered fare. So our discussion about fare surcharges, actually that only applies to the metered fare part of the business. It doesn't apply to the ride-hailing booking part where the fares vary according to however the platforms want to set it.
Let's bring in Mr. Ban. So you actually drive a taxi. What changes have you seen in terms of people wanting to be taxi drivers or preferring to be on Grab or Gojek or Tada, any other platform?
In the beginning, yes, a lot of taxi drivers actually go to private hire vehicle. But recently, a lot of private hire initially was a taxi driver come back to our taxi industry.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, come
Why?
back.
Yes.
Oh.
We are noticing there's some numbers going up. The taxi, you have much more freedom. If you don't like the app, you can go to the airport. If you don't like to go to the airport, you can go to some of the places of interest. Or you can go park at taxi stand.
So let me ask you about the surcharge. So when it comes to the surcharge, okay, from a commuter point of view, I am thinking it's so much easier for me to just call a Grab. I don't need to pay a surcharge unless there's like the surges in pricing, right? If there's a rainy day and etc. So do you find that people have no problem paying a surcharge from, say, Changi or from the zoo?
Initially, when there's a surcharge in the airport, $6 to $8, there's some interview in the airport itself. And the response from the locals, they are positive. Because they say that I only just came maybe out of country one or twice a year.
Yep.
So paying additional $3 surcharge is okay. It's not an everyday issue.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's for airport, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what about the parks and are they mostly tourists or?
Mostly they are tourists. The increment in the surcharge is not to increase the income for taxi driver. It's just to make them park there and wait for
To go there.
Yeah,
it's
go
an
there and wait.
incentive to
wait for
get the
yeah.
taxi drivers to
Yeah.
show up at those
You
locations.
should, just wait there. And also, it's actually good for Singapore as a tourist attraction. Also.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for half an hour or 1 hour for taxi to arrive.
Okay,
I
Walter, do you
see.
think that the surcharges are incentives for drivers or to just drive away people?
The surcharges, the entire point of them is to try to, change the fare system for taxis so that taxi drivers actually have this reason to go to the places where the surcharges are. I mean, that's the purpose of the fare system, right? The fare system, in a way, has to try to balance supply and demand. If the fare fares are too high, nobody wants to take the taxis or the rides, and then you have to adjust them lower. But when they're too low, you don't have enough supply coming into the places where you want there to be the drivers. So
Okay.
that's why the fares had to go up in this case.
So are they too low in these locations?
The problem is if you have a current fare level before the surcharges and you have repeated complaints by, the venue operators, by the tourists and so on, that they're waiting there and they can't get a taxi, to me, that's a sign that the fares are not competitive enough to
Okay.
convince the drivers to be there. And that's why they have
Right.
to go up.
Okay. No, we were just talking about this,
Yeah.
right? Especially in places like Changi and, some of these tourist destinations, right? What if there are no taxis? When you arrive at your arrival hall and then you have to wait for a taxi, there's a sign there, there's a big sign there that says you can just download the Grab app and then you can get a Grab.
So you're saying maybe we don't even need taxis? Is
Yeah,
that where you're
so
going?
my question is, do we really need to have taxis waiting for people?
Or can it be
will
on
it
demand?
be evolved eventually to
Yeah.
a system where everyone who comes into Singapore can simply catch a ride through an app?
It all depends on passenger needs. Certain passengers, they have children below 1.35. Definitely they have to take a taxi.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah.
This is a whole other discussion because why taxis don't need car seats for children and regular cars?
Yeah, but his
so
point
whether
is
it's-
that because he has to meet different demands of
Correct.
tourists, right? So,
Correct.
for example, maybe some elderly who don't have access to an app.
But then again, a tourist showing up at the airport could go to the counter and there's someone with all the devices to say, I will book on your behalf. That we can have a kind of customer service for those who are new to the country, You don't need taxis literally lining up and waiting.
This is an interesting discussion because the policy problem we're currently having today is that the market has already decided that ride-hailing, booking through your app, is the way that most consumers in Singapore want to go. And that's reflected in the fact that the share of all the rides, which are actually by metered fare, has been going down continuously and is probably going to go down further in the future because most of the locals who are still using, metered fares, they're actually our older population. Most of the younger ones will use apps today. And so the problem now becomes, how do we provide enough metered fare service to cater to elderly Singaporeans? If there's no motivation for the drivers to turn on the meter and provide the metered fare service, these older Singaporeans will be standing at the taxi stand and nobody will ever show up.
So there will be an underserved group of people.
But you know what? I mean,
essentially.
there's so many things that, in a way, we can't hold back some of progress just because a small group. I'm saying we need to assist them and they will learn to use it. Like my mother-in-law didn't have WhatsApp for many years. Finally, we taught her how to use it. Now she loves it. She uses it all the time.
Okay, but let me challenge you about this. Okay, so whenever there is a MRT breakdown, for example, or it's a heavy rain or whatever, and one thing that bugs me terribly is the surge pricing, right? So it's like from here, one north to my home, which is in the north, it can be upwards of $50-$60, which to me is ridiculous. But if I could just go, to the taxi stand below and get a metered fare, so it's affordable and accessible, isn't that
But the
how
taxi
a
guy would
public
also say,
transport system
why would I
should-
go, if I'm a taxi driver, why would I wait at the taxi stand when I can make more money through the app?
There are some drivers who don't use platform at all.
Why don't they use the platform? Because they feel that this is...
They are not comfortable. They are not confident enough.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
fair enough.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. So actually, whether it's a booking or it's a street hail, we have to maintain a certain balances.
It's an occupation for still many taxi drivers, right?
All the more reason to pay more for the service. It's demand supply, right? Rainy day, more people take these rides, so prices will go up.
I mean, it goes back to your idea of what is the role of public transport, right? You consider, taxis to be part of this whole infrastructure of trains, buses, etc. Walter, what do you think?
Historically, taxis in Singapore have been very important precisely because we know that many Singaporeans are not able to own a car because of our very stringent car control policies. So,
there you go.
without taxis, we don't have this vital service for those Singaporeans who can't quite afford to own a car, but they do want a more premium service in public transport and they're willing to pay for it. So taxis fill a very important role there. The question becomes, what's the correct price for this service? And is the price that you're paying, is it sufficient to actually provide the service sustainably? And I think that's where this entire debate comes about, because as a passenger, of course, you want the prices to be as low as possible. But then if they're too low, the drivers will say, what's in it for me to join this industry? Because it's hours are long, it's, tiring, and a lot of customers don't treat you well, right? So why would you do this unless you're being fairly paid? And that's what this is all about.
I want to talk about how the government is working to deal with this. I mean, actually, they've done quite a bit. They are lowering operating costs. They've tried to reduce rentals slightly. They are making it easier for people to get taxi licenses compared to before. They've made it less onerous to go for basically the administrative things have become easier. But my question is, actually, when we went to look at the Grab rentals versus the taxi rentals, there's still a difference.
Cheaper.
Of course, Grab is cheaper. So do you think they need to do more, or are these changes that they're trying to make it more attractive for people to stay in the industry?
I believe that they have to do a little bit more because now our competition actually come from the
Ride hailing.
right hill because of the fare itself, and because of their rental is low.
Yeah.
The reason why the rental is low because of their car can resell into Singapore market again. As a taxi, we can't. Once we register, we can't resell into the market. That's why they probably can be a bit lower than us. Although we have the same 10 years of COE card.
Just to make another point about the rental difference, it's also because there's a different operating model for the company that owns the vehicles or the platform, right? Which is that for the taxi company, traditionally, they don't take any commissions on the fares earned by the drivers. The drivers keep everything, but in return for that, the upfront cost of renting a taxi is higher. But for the private hail platforms, all the money comes in from the commissions. So that's why if they do have an affiliated rental company, they will usually try to price that lower because they expect to make up the difference on the commissions they get anyway from the platform. So it's a bit of a difference in operating model for the people who own the vehicles here.
So then, what's the incentive with being a regulated taxi driver? Or with a taxi company?
So the one difference by law is that, taxis have meters and therefore they can take metered fares. They can take a fare anywhere in Singapore which flags you down in the street, right? Street hail.
Okay.
That's the only difference. Otherwise, for booked fares through a ride-hailing platform, both taxis and private hire can fulfill that. So the reason why this is an issue in our market today is that the metered fare has tended to lag the private hire booked fare. And because of that, first, a lot of taxi drivers have not found using the meter attractive because they may get paid less for the same journey than taking a book fare. Second, the passengers tend to nowadays prefer the certainty of knowing how much they're going to pay and also being able to compare between platforms. And because of that, the market has shifted very decisively towards basically booked fares, ride-hail fares.
I actually run only by standard taxi. That means no matter which platform give me any job, I only choose standard taxi.
Okay.
So at the meantime, I just park my car in a taxi stand.
Why have you chosen to do it this way?
Because I felt that as a taxi, I need to run by meter. When I don't lose out, I park my car in the taxi stand, waiting for a passenger to come. So happen that there's a booking, standard taxi booking come, I just take and go.
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's much more better.
You're not concerned that you may be losing out to others who are doing, taking any kind of ride, not just standard
in
taxi?
fact, I talked to some of the peers. I'm doing better than them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They can do about 30 jobs for $200 or $300
Yeah.
Okay.
for fixed fare. I do 20 over jobs for $300 over.
Oh,
Ah, okay.
because you still pick on your meter.
Yes, I do solely on meters. Let's say I cannot find a passenger on the street, I just go to places of interest where they
Right.
got surcharge. And after 5 p.m., they got 25% surcharge also.
Right.
And a booking fee of $3.30. Amount can
So
be
actually, those surcharges do make sense to
For
you. I
sure.
mean,
Yeah,
as
for
a-
sure.
as it is an
Yeah.
incentive to
Yeah.
go to those
Yeah.
locations.
Yes,
And how often, when you're waiting at the taxi stand, do you have to wait a long time?
depends which taxi stand.
Okay.
So let's say you're in Taka,
Yeah.
should be very fast.
Okay.
10 to 15 minutes. Yeah.
Near my shopping mall, there's no taxi in the taxi stand.
Which
literally,
part of
yeah.
Singapore are you in again?
North.
Sorry.
Where? North?
In the north, Yishun.
Causeway Point.
Yes, Causeway
Yeah.
Point,
There's a
North
lot-
Point.
The Malaysian taxis can't come over, but yeah, otherwise.
Yeah. So this
interesting.
is the issue. Even in Plaza Singapore on a Sunday, let's say.
Yes.
You got to wait for taxis to drop off somebody before the green light goes on.
Yeah.
So most people, I would say 9 out of 10 people would just book a Grab. Yeah, so that's my experience on the
Yeah.
ground. I'm not sure. Walter, do you take taxis?
I don't take taxis or private hire, but the data basically shows that most Singaporeans nowadays take a booking,
Yeah.
ride-hail booking. Yeah, that's what the data shows.
Our research also shows that people don't really care as long as they get a car.
Yeah.
And even
That's
if
right.
you're on the app, right, it tells you, okay, you know what, this is a busy period. We're gonna search with taxi car.
Yeah. That's what I
Right?
want to say. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So it doesn't matter for me as long as I
Correct.
get a ride and I get to my destination is what
Yeah.
matters.
When
Yeah.
this appeared, it means that taxi have business.
So you see, you can't get rid of the taxis just yet.
Or you just need more of the private hire vehicles. Basically, it's demand and supply.
Also on Gojek also, I receive a lot of job, but I don't want to entertain.
Why?
Fare too low. Compared to my taxi.
So that's why we couldn't get it.
So you know why a lot of taxi drivers don't do also.
As in,
Yeah.
when you say
need-
too low, means it's not worth your time driving there, picking them up.
Yes,
sending
of
them.
course. Yeah.
Is it when you say too low, as in because the profit margin is too low, or does it not even cover your costs?
Cover costs because it can't be based on one transaction to
Yeah.
state whether-
Cost,
Yeah.
yeah.
Example, okay, peak hour I got a job is 9:30 once you open the door. When you bought it's a 9:30.
Yeah.
But if Gojek give me $8 job, does it make sense for me to do?
Okay, so when he means 9:30, the minute you
$9.
open the door, is because your flag down fare is already for something, right? Am I right?
$4.80 plus $3.30 per kilo.
Okay, so it's flag down fare plus surcharge. So before you even get in the car, he's already made some money.
But some people are going to be upset with you because this is the whole story last time of how whenever the peak period comes, the taxis will hide until the surcharges kick in. Then they say, okay, now I'm here.
No, nowadays taxi usually don't. They are in a taxi stand. Yeah, they're in the taxi stand.
No, but it's a legitimate, way for
Yeah.
them to try and make a better living.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
if passenger
In
can
terms
choose
of-
the lowest price,
You
why
can
not the
also
driver choose the highest
That
price?
is true.
Yeah. So maybe just to add on the supply issue for a bit more, I think the problem that we have, and it's not an easy one to solve, is that we may not have enough supply during peak periods because
Yeah.
everybody wants to take a
Yeah.
taxi maybe at the evening on Friday when it's raining, right? But just because we have high fares and not enough supply during those times does not mean you have enough demand for drivers to make a living during the rest of the day. That's our real problem.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to solve this issue because if you have enough supply to satisfy everybody who wants a taxi during the peak, those drivers are going to be starving to death during the rest of the day.
That
And
is
that's our
true.
issue, right?
So, Mr. Ban, maybe would you like to say, is there something that you think might be, that you want to suggest that might improve, the livelihood of taxi drivers? We've had taxi drivers for a very, very long time. It's a very old industry. There's still many, many people who make a living out of it, put food on the table and support their families. What do you think will help keep that industry alive?
Just do as per usual. Do as what you believe. If you got an issue, come to NTA. NTA will help you.
Remember,
So
this
I'm
is
so-
NTA, not LTA.
so I don't-
This
Go
is
to
the
wrong
National
people.
Taxi Association.
So I don't think that taxi is in the sunset industry. No.
Oh, you
Okay.
don't think so?
Don't think so. Until autonomous vehicle come out. That might be a problem for
Ah.
taxi drivers.
Okay.
But at the
Yes.
moment, I think taxi are very resilient.
Oh, that's very far. Autonomous is very
Yeah,
far.
2045 probably. I am not too sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yeah.
taxis are here to stay, in your opinion.
Yes.
Walter?
For me, it's not about whether taxis stay or not. It's about whether we have a service, a private transport service that meets people's needs. And I think for the drivers themselves, it's up to them to choose the way of working that makes the most sense for them. Some of them may want to only provide metered service. That's fine. And I think as long as they can make a living, as long as people want that, that's a good thing. But others may choose to go onto platforms or just rent a private hire vehicle only. And as long as they can also make a living doing that, that's fine too, right? So I think the drivers should be allowed to choose, and the passengers also have to choose the service that makes their needs the best.
Let's not over-regulate, over-control, and over-prescribe. Some of these things, people can figure it out on their own.
I do think that the industry is, is undergoing some changes.
Yeah.
I see it even in my own household. I still like talking to taxi drivers. But my
No one at home will talk to you.
yes. But my kids, they are completely agnostic. They don't care. as long as they get a ride.
Right.
You know, they will not have the patience to wait at a taxi stand or to flag down a taxi. So I think, and as you have rightly pointed out, autonomous vehicles will come into play at some point, and the situation will change.
When autonomous vehicles are out, we can come back and have this discussion
I'll be retired,
again.
I think.
Retired? I think we'll all be
So-
retired.
so
Should be. All right, thanks so much for coming
Thank
in.
you.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks to our guests and of course the team behind this podcast as well. Shout out to Junaini Johari, Tiffany Ang, Joanne Chan, Sayawin, and sound mixing by Ken Delbridge. Remember, follow and subscribe. Of course, we're on YouTube as well. Otherwise, it's Crispy and I saying bye for now.
Bye.
Catch you later.